It is so simple, and yet it's not.
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
Yeah, and that's the struggle we have. Thinking about this morning actually, and it's the struggle we have between the ego self and our divine self. Because I mean, this whole ascension thing is bringing us back to oneness. We talk about being one, and we have that divide within ourselves right from the very beginning. And so many people want to get rid of the ego, but it's not about getting rid of the ego. The ego is important. The ego makes you you. The ego is what tethers us to this physical existence that we've come here to experience. But we forget that there's this other side, and this consciousness side, this spiritual side, the big I, the I am, whatever you want to call it. And we separate them. And that's part of our forgetfulness, that's part of our unworthiness, that we live in this ego place where it's all about the world, all about outside of us, all about what we have to do. And we forget about this consciousness, which is about who we are at the core and how we be. And so there's always this struggle. And so we look outside for the answers. I think that's why it's difficult, because we're always looking, we live here in the ego and we're looking out there, and that's wrong and that needs to be fixed, and how can we survive if that's happening, and the world is being destroyed because of them, and all that physical stuff, which is real, but we see it from the eyes of the ego, and the I love yous brings them together again. When we nourish the ego, when we nourish that, the ego lives in fear, the ego lives in lack, frustration, the unhealthy ego, not the ego itself, but the unhealthy ego lives in those places. Desperation, it's lacking love, it's lacking worthiness, it's lacking, and that's why we strike out and we look, everything is wrong. And when we can bring them together and nourish the ego from ourselves, from our godliness, then the ego can stop looking outside. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's quite an interesting perspective, because often, well, I suppose that's really nice by bringing it together, because often you look at, you, maybe me, and you sort of the kind of message you get is it's about losing the ego in order to move forward, or to to find to I suppose move into the next dimension. So how does that work? So you're not actually wanting to get rid of the ego.
Well, we can't.
We can't.
The ego is what makes you you.
Yeah.
It makes you the individual. If we didn't have that, we would just go back to God.
Yeah.
We'd come in, and within milliseconds we'd disappear out again.
Yes.
The ego holds us here.
Yeah.
This is me,
Yeah.
separate from you,
Yeah.
living in this existence.
Yes.
I am Al Williams. I am a this, I'm a that, blah, blah. All that stuff that we say get rid of.
Yeah.
But then we wouldn't live in this reality.
Yes.
So the ego is very important to keep us in this reality.
Right. Yeah, that makes.
However, if we get lost in the ego and forget about our consciousness, which was part of the game, so it's not a bad thing. Part of the game was to forget. And so we became our ego. Now coming back, when we merge the two, and we nourish our ego with our consciousness, with our godliness, the ego can then get everything that it's searching for. It's no longer the child wanting love from parents, healing hurt from loved ones, all the stuff that we carry with us. We can heal all of that by nourishing our ego ourselves, with our higher selves. The Jamaicans have, the Rastafarians have this thing they say, I and I.
Okay.
And it's that I always walk with Jah, God.
Yeah.
I like to think of it as a capital I with a little I inside it.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the ego, the little I. and our consciousness the big I.
Yeah.
Again, if you think of Jah, then again you're putting it outside of yourself or any God figure.
Yeah.
But if you think of yourself as a consciousness, as that part of that godliness, then everything that we need, we can give ourselves. Yeah. To the point that we're told that at some point we won't need to eat or drink because we will just be able to nourish ourselves. All the energy we need will come from that exchange of energy through our higher consciousness. That's to come. But for now, it's just the I love yous, telling yourself I love you every day. Not just I love you, but just being kind to ourselves, treating ourselves as we would a young child. Yeah. When a child falls down, you don't go, get up, get separate. You pick it up, but we fall down and we berate ourselves. So when we can make that shift and treat our egos with kindness and compassion and praise ourselves for doing stuff and understand that when we get triggered, it's only showing us where we need more love and give ourselves the love. When we can do that, then everything shifts and you no longer look outside for support.
That makes total sense. I like that.
Yeah, I don't see how you can ever get rid of the ego and still be human.
So it's acknowledging, basically, that is the self-love.